And there was a rivalry game between Duke and Carolina on Saturday. It happened. I was there. Tipped off at 6:30, Joe. The rivalry is not dead, especially considering some of the reactions we've been getting after Duke's win over North Carolina at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Jon Scheyer, 1-0 as head coach to start the rivalry.
Yeah, I actually called this last year. First of all, full credit to you. You said on Friday you thought Duke was going to win this game. You outlined why you thought Duke was going to win this game. So my favorite words to you, sir, are you were right.
Thank you.
That's number one.
I didn't get the Derek Lively part right, though.
Like I did in the sense
good
that
as he was.
No, but I did in the sense that he had to be the reason.
Yes.
Because length will bother Baycott. We actually saw this with Federico from Pitt in the minutes that he was able to bother Baycott in the that game. So just sticking with Duke, right? I said I was down in New Orleans. Duke lost. I remember this. Duke lost to Carolina. Obviously, everyone remembers that. But my shot at Joe to go was actually, this is a good thing for Jon Scheyer because he now, all of this, I have to follow K.
Oh, right.
It's actually good in terms of the rivalry for Scheyer because he can now just say, I want to know. That wasn't me. That wasn't my team. And he's right. So I do think there was some motivation there. I do think I said the only way that Duke could win was you had to have Lively, who remember, top 5, recruit coming out of high school last year. And Tyrese Proctor played like an Austin Rivers, a Jason Tatum, maybe a guy who was struggling a little bit and then realized, oh, wait a second. This is where I make my money. This is the game that I care about. This is the game that I need.
That's what these games do.
And I thought I thought he was really, really good.
That's what these games are supposed to do.
Oh, yeah. We saw that with Caleb Love during the pandemic, by the way. Like, that was one of his first games where you're like, okay, this is what he can be. I want to stick with Duke just a little bit longer. I thought the game down in Atlanta where they hammered Georgia Tech gave them some confidence. And I want to get back to that concept of confidence because I think the reason you're seeing NC State run so hot right now is confidence. I think Duke going to Atlanta, maybe beating what you think is a bad team, the way that they did gave them confidence. Getting Jeremy Roach back gave them some confidence. The way that Jon Scheyer has handled his bench and used players in different games, it's been a really difficult first season for him. It hasn't been all champagne and rainbows and the road paved with gold. He's done a good job with the injuries and the changes in the lineups. And I think it all came together for him on Saturday where, Lively was good, Proctor was good, and Jeremy Roach was healthy and out there. That was an older veteran player kind of stepping up in the moment as well.
I'm glad you brought up confidence because I agree with you that Duke is playing like a confident team, but I think they got their confidence not from the Georgia Tech game, but in the ways that they've been playing in these types of games, especially at Cameron Indoor Stadium, where they've been perfect at home.
They have, yes.
And I have, in the way the cookie crumbles, I've spent more time at Cameron Indoor this year than other home gyms. Again, it's just the way my schedule has played out as I try to dot the area and watch as much basketball as I can. And every time I watch Duke play, I feel like they're growing because they understand their roles. And if they adhere to those roles, good things will happen. And as Coach K would say, and now Jon Scheyer says, be in position to play winning basketball. And that's where Duke was down the stretch against Carolina on Saturday. And you mentioned NC State playing with confidence. Again, that's another team that is playing to their roles. How much have we talked about Casey Morsell this season? Understanding what he is there to do, and he's hit big shots when necessary.
It's been an amazing turnaround for NC State in really understanding what their roles are. And this, of course, is all leading us to North Carolina. What are their roles and what are their problems? And I thought they were on full display on Saturday. Baycott, if by his relative standard of excellence, he still had good numbers, but he wasn't a dominant force in the game. Of course, a big part of that is not being able to get to the foul line because of Lively's size.
You also got to get him the ball, too, which didn't happen in the last 10 minutes of that game.
Yeah, and then you see R.J. Davis, you see Caleb Love not exactly hitting on all cylinders. I don't know if there's friction there. I'm not going to get into the parlor game of whatever the rumor du jour is about any of that. They just don't look like they're on the same page. They just don't look like they're in sync.
Yeah.
And that's a problem for Carolina because they're a limited team. And then, I do feel bad that I was critical of Pete Nance on Twitter. I thought it was a fair criticism. He doesn't have to be Brady Manick, and I think we need to get past all of those preseason expectations of just plugging a guy in who's a 4 who can shoot. He doesn't need to be Brady Manick for Carolina to be successful. He needs to be a world better than he played on Saturday night. That was a big moment on Saturday night, and...
But here's the thing. I get why you're.
That was a big
out.
moment on Saturday night, and my man, it ain't Northwestern anymore. That's the biggest stage you got.
What? That is what we're doing.
Talk about the Super Bowl.
Oh,
we talking about
the Super Bowl.
That's right. I forgot. Nothing else can happen this week. It's the Super Bowl. Eagles, Chiefs. It doesn't matter that Carolina and Duke just played a basketball game and there's all sorts of stuff to pull on in terms of threads and what it means for Duke and what it means for Carolina. No. We must talk about the Super Bowl. We are legally mandated to talk about the Super Bowl. All right, so tell you what. Can we just throw in a prop? Would that satisfy the football gods? All right, you got a prop for me, Joe?
I think with the Super Bowl, you have to start with the most basic of props.
What? Give it to me.
The coin toss.
All right.
Believe it or not, it's minus 120
okay.
each side, meaning you have to bet $120 to make 100. But I think tails never fails, so give me tails.
All right.
Minus 120.
All right, cool. We satisfied that. Super Bowl discussed. Let's get back to North Carolina and Duke. A couple things I wanted to get to before the end of the segment. And to wrap my point on, I see what you're saying about Pete Nance. And I also think we have to recognize just how much of it was an anomaly for Brady Manick to have the three-point production he had last year comparative to what he was doing at Oklahoma. And yes, to your point, this ain't Northwestern. I think Ryan Young also understood that too, because he played, 6 minutes in that game, 4 minutes in that game, because he was not a match for Armando Bacot. Armando Bacot would have feasted on Ryan Young had he stayed in the game longer. So shout out to Derek Lively on understanding the assignment, right? But it's not just Pete Nance, man. Caleb Love is playing outside the offense, okay? Armando Bacot is an afterthought in crucial moments of the game when it's very clear that Hubert Davis wants the ball to go to Armando Bacot, which helps explain why Hubert Davis reacted in the way that it reacted after the game. The thing that got a lot of people talking was this comment, and I was in the press room. I was actually kind of surprised it went there, but here's Hubert Davis after the game talking about the lack of free throws.
The stat that I'm looking at is going into the game, we had shot 150 more free throws than any other opponent in our conference, and we shot 3. 0 in the second half. So that's what I'm looking at.
Why do you think you didn't shoot any free throws? Was it?
You answer it. We attacked the basket.
That was Ross Martin of Inside Carolina. He said, well, why do you think that is? He's like, you figure it out. We attacked the basket, which was indicative to me that he felt that they should have been at the line more. But that's not how that game went. They weren't calling fouls. They let them play. I liked it. I like when they let them play. I'm tired of officiating talk. I don't mind a physical basketball game. It is a contact sport. And if it's mostly consistent, then I think everybody should be cool with it. Which, there's 2 points I wanted to make. I'm not going to go all in on Hubert Davis for his comments, even if I thought it was a bad look following that game. You should just own it that you got beat that night and not talk about the free throws, because nobody wants to hear it from the North Carolina coach. Like, I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but not a single person wants to hear the head coach at North Carolina whining about the lack of free throw attempts. Nobody. Okay? So you're not going to get a sympathetic ear, period. However, I give Hubert Davis the benefit of the doubt because, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, Hubert Davis, NBA guy, right?
Spent some time in the league, yes.
What do NBA coaches do?
Well, they like to plant seeds.
Yes, they do. Phil Jackson was the best at it, all right? But NBA coaches tend to plant seeds. They want you to understand, I don't like how this went, and you guys better make this a point of emphasis the next time these two teams play. It is gamesmanship. I don't fault him for it. That being said, if your game plan is dependent on an allotment of trips to the line, that's a recipe for what happened on Saturday, a failure to adjust. By the way, just because you get to the line doesn't mean you'll actually make your free throws either. I don't want to base what happened against Pitt to its essence, boil it down to the nitty-gritty. But, Joe, am I speaking out of turn if I said, had Carolina hit more than, 60% of their free throws, which I think was the final number in their loss to Pitt, if they had actually hit their free throws like they've been doing this season, do they win that game?
Absolutely.
Yes. So it's not even a guarantee that you're going to make your free throws, given what had happened in the Pitt game. So I think that's a huge problem that there's some sort of you're owed trips to the line. You're not owed a damn thing. You're not owed trips to the line, which gets back to the reaction that I saw on Saturday night, which I thought was completely fair and normal. Nobody wants to hear the head coach in North Carolina complaining about the officials. I'm sure there's separate ACC coach group chats going, can you believe this? Not just fans.